The Movie Preview Critic. Informing and entertaining your movie world.
What's up, good movie lovers? Welcome to the Box Office Breakdown. The numbers are in for the box office weekend of March 13th to the 15th, so there's only one thing left for us to do.
Break it down.
Holy There's no other way to describe Watchmen's almost 70% drop at the box office this week. The Box Office Psychic's original prediction was a second week of $40 million. Then last week on the breakdown, it was readjusted for a total of 25 to 35 million, which, as it turns out, was still way off because it only made 17.8 million, taking second place. Let's give ourselves a D for our box office performance this weekend. 18 million is better than most movies do on their opening weekends, but it's a mega disappointment here. After 2 weeks, it's only made 85.7 million. Still, compared with other movies, that's not so horrible, especially when you add in the roughly 50 million it's made overseas, bringing its current total to about $140 million. With a budget of 150 million, it'll make its money back. The problem is that Hollywood is unfairly comparing this movie with Zack Snyder's previous hit, 300, or the other popular Warner Brothers box office success, The Dark Knight. Watchmen is way different than those movies, but it seems to be the H-Wood thing to compare projects, and when you do that, you get these results. 300 made 457 million worldwide, and everyone knows The Dark Knight just broke $1 billion worldwide. Watchmen at this point is barely going to make 200 million worldwide. That's kind of bad news for us, because the ramification of this might just be one big "I told you so" from Hollywood, which might go something like this. I told you so that there aren't enough fanboy, geek girls, hipsters to make this a blockbuster hit. I told you so. You have to appeal to a wider demographic. I told you so. Faithfully adapting the comic book while sacrificing the strengths of the movie medium will mean box office disaster. I told you so. Don't please the fans, please the financiers. In the long run, that might mean less risk-taking for future blockbusters. Watchmen wasn't the perfect adaptation, and it sure wasn't the smartest or the most mature movie it could have been based on the source material, but it is something new and different than what's come before. Along with The Dark Knight, it's a blockbuster with larger themes, big ideas, and interesting characters. Let's hope future comic book movies stay brave instead of playing it box office safe. In first place is the movie that plays it Disney safe, Race to Witch Mountain. Last week the Box Office Psychic predicted 25 million for this one, and it made 24.4. It seems that the families that made Paul Blart this winter's biggest hit have officially dubbed The Rock kid-friendly. Nowadays, if you ask what The Rock is cooking, the answer is not going to be a can of whoop-ass. It's a bowl of macaroni and cheese with animal-shaped noodles. What else is there to say? Kids need their big screen entertainment too, right? I just wish it was as smart and as well developed as all the Pixar movies. Let's give ourselves a B here. The big box office opening weekend here means there's probably going to be a sequel. Return to Witch Mountain, Escape from Witch Mountain, Battle for Witch Mountain, whatever it's called, it's going into production. And again, you can't really say too much bad stuff about this one. It's a good family film. A harmless way to hang out with your kids or your folks for a couple of hours. There's just one major ramification here. The Rock, as we knew him back in the day, is really gone. Gone as the action star, as the ass-kicking Scorpion King, and he's been replaced by the family-friendly box office king. Action or family movie star, either way, as an actor you tend to get locked into certain expectations. It seems here that Dwayne Johnson is happy being considered a family movie star. His next movie is called Tooth Fairy. The story deals something with a minor league hockey player who has to be a real-life tooth fairy for one day. The Rock wearing a tooth fairy outfit. Oh, jeez. Look for it later this year in November. The second new release of the week takes third place, The Last House on the Left, making 14.1 million. Last week the Box Office Psychic predicted 10 million. For our behavior here, we get a C. 14 million isn't as amazing as 44 million for Friday the 13th, its opening weekend, but it gives this one a chance to make around 30 to 35 million. Its budget is probably somewhere between 20 and 25 million, so combine that with the foreign returns and future DVD sales, and this just might lead to a sequel. If not a theatrical release, then at least a straight-to-DVD installment. It would have been nice to send a clear message to H-Wood that we're tired of the remake rape of old horror classics. A take of about 7 million would have done that. Here, we gave it almost double that, which is a bad sign for our movie future. For now, we'll see if we can make it up this next weekend. Which is the great thing about being a movie lover. We always have the next movie weekend to redeem ourselves for our previous box office weekend actions. Places 4 through 9 consist of the same movies we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks. Man, this has really been a slow start to the box office year. Our grades stay the same because all the movies pretty much stayed in their respective places. Finishing up the top 10 is Miss March. It made a pathetic 2.4 million. That's worse than F'd Up did its opening weekend, when it made 5. Last week, the Psychic predicted a take of 7 million, mainly because the Playboy Mansion was involved, and the fact that this looked a little raunchier than the Playing It Safe F'd Up. I actually saw this movie this past weekend. The short, long story is, I hung out with some friends, and everyone was in a comedy mood. It was either Paul Blart, F'd Up, or Miss March. Then someone pointed out that the dudes in it are from the IFC comedy show The Whitest Kids You Know. I've never seen the show, but everyone seemed convinced that was a good thing. And it turns out it was actually pretty funny. In a mid-90s Farley Brothers something about Mary gross out comedy kind of way. It really pushed some boundaries, and the audience laughed pretty hard, and I have to include myself in that. It definitely had a lot of Farley Brothers shock-level humor moments, but it forgot to add the heart that those movies also had. There's nothing wrong with fart jokes as long as the people making them, or falling victim to them, feel like human beings. It was only in 1,700 theaters, so maybe the studio didn't feel there was going to be a big enough audience for this. Let's give the fans of The Whitest Kids You Know an F, because you should support your comedy troupe better than that, and for the rest of us we get a B. It's not our fault that the advertising was weak. In the previews, they didn't even mention that this was a Whitest Kids production. What's the point of having them make a movie if you're not going to promote that? Then again, comedy teams that have success on TV never really break through on the big screen. Kids in the Hall failed to do it, the peeps behind Trailer Park Boys and Reno 911 failed to make box office noise, and most SNL movies tend to make their money back and then leave theaters quickly. But I will give this movie some credit for at least going to some ballsy territory instead of playing it safe, like F'd Up, which is really why we get a B here. Miss March should have made more money than F'd Up. It's a riskier, funnier comedy that unfortunately won't be rewarded for its comedy balls. Now, there are 4 new movies this weekend, so let's find out how much money they make by asking
the box office.
First up is Duplicity with Clive Owen and Julia Roberts. It doesn't help that Clive Owen was just in The International, and the ads for both movies are running at the same time, making them seem kind of like the same movie. The previews here make the movie feel like a wannabe Ocean's 11, 12, 13, mixed with a little Michael Clayton, which actually fits because this is from the director of Michael Clayton. It's a romantic comedy crime heist caper flick like the Thomas Crown Affair or Entrapment. The preview here tries to make the story seem hip and cool, and funny, but it seems like it's just trying too hard. The major draw here will probably be Julia Roberts, since she doesn't make many movies anymore, and that might lead to a bigger female demographic for this one. Let's say this weekend it's going to make about 15 million. Next is The Great Buck Howard, starring John Malkovich, as a has-been magician, mesmerizer, showman who wants to get back on his feet and into the game again. This is probably going to have a really small release. The advertising has been pretty weak, and the story really isn't big screen worthy. Seems like this should be a USA, FX, or Showtime movie. The story isn't exactly exciting enough to make us want to pay $10 to see it, and it's available on demand the same day it's released in theaters, so why bother going to the show for this? It'll probably make somewhere around 1.5 million and be gone pretty quickly from theaters. The battle for the top spot will probably go to I Love You Man, starring Judd Apatow regulars in a Judd Apatow style story that actually has no Judd Apatow involved in any level of the production. It's a bromantic comedy that you know is going to push comedy boundaries and have a nice mix of heart and farts. It's the first highbrow, lowbrow comedy of the year, and it's a perfect reason for bros to go to the movies, so look for this to make about 20 million this weekend. Finally, Nicholas I Say Yes to Any and Every Project, Cage, stars in Knowing. Am I the only person who thinks this is an M. Night Shyamalan movie that he just sold to someone for like $1? And didn't we see this a couple years back starring Jim Carrey when it was called Number 23? Yeah, we basically did, but instead of being a straight up thriller, it looks like there's some bigger action involved. So we get Nicolas Cage acting like every other character he's played for the last 10 movies, trying to unravel a Da Vinci Code style mystery that deals with dates and disasters. The genre advertising in the preview seems like it might attract a big enough audience to make 15 million opening weekend. But let's hope for our sake and for Nicholas's career, it makes less, so it wakes him out of his paycheck-collecting zombie acting trance and rejuvenates him, making him choose better roles in the future. I, for one, am a Nicolas Cage fan, but I'm quickly losing hope. So that's it. Let's meet back here next week to see how our box office voting is affecting our movie future. Till then, take care, choose your movies wisely, because, remember, Hwood gives us more of what we pay for, and as always,
Long live good movies!